Hi everybody, welcome back to my studio and my new video on my 1978 EVH Frankenstein replica. Now this is actually my own build. I have a couple other versions here that you can see behind me. I've got a Stripe Series 1 and a 2006 home build that I did. I'm going to detail each one of them. Let's talk a little bit about the history of this guitar. A lot of people know the history of this guitar, and you know, since most people don't, I'm going to talk about it a little bit because I'm going to do it. You know, I had some folks this weekend actually that were musicians that didn't even know that this was the red, black and white guitar in the end. So I think it's, you know, something that needs to be talked about, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about the history. The guitar started out as a second, basically built by Len Ellsworth, and potentially Dave Schechter was involved in this build of these different bodies, using the Schechter templates for the body. Now, that's what I've been told. Now, you can put in the comments if you know anything differently. But they did a run of like 100 bodies over a weekend, and then they think that those bodies got shipped down to Charvel, and one of those bodies was a second. And that second, Eddie Van Halen picked up and used for this guitar. He got it really cheap, and he decided it needed paint, and then he decided to paint it like this. So that's kind of the rundown on the story of this guitar. But what's really cool about this guitar is that it changed guitar forever. It was the first guitar that kind of combined the qualities of a Les Paul and a Stratocaster together in one guitar. And that's kind of indicated by the Gibson sticker on here. Eddie said he wanted to cross-pollinate a Fender Strat because of the whammy bar with a Gibson Les Paul because of the tone. And he created in that wake an entire movement for guitar players. Not only that it focused people in on the guitar, but guitar players wanted to make their own versions of this. Some of them wanted to copy it verbatim, which is why he ended up making it black, white, and red in the end. And some of them just wanted to do graphic guitar. So you saw the Tiger Stripes of George Lynch. You saw different kinds of, you know, graphics across all different kinds of guitars for a decade almost. And that all came from this guitar. So this guitar really was, important in guitar playing history. And that would have been just as important as anything else, but Eddie Van Halen was one of the greatest guitar players to ever come along. So the combination of him creating a new version of an instrument that highlighted the guitar's virtuosity, he then was able to play it so well that it just elevated the whole thing, and the whole movement started the 80s and the great shred decade, I would guess you'd call it. Anyway, this guitar is responsible for all that. At one point, Charvel started making some copies that were striped. They were yellow and black copies of the second guitar they made for Eddie Van Halen. And when that happened, Eddie got mad because he thought, you know, this was my thing. He didn't want everybody to have it. So that's sort of why he did what he did with this. And so he decided to paint it red to just throw everybody off again. But he said later in his interview for Guitar World that he wished he kept it black and white. And I wished he kept it black and white too. Even though I love the black, white, and red Frankenstein a lot, everybody does. It was such a part of our childhood. But of course, the genesis of that guitar was this guitar. Such an important guitar. Now, my replica on this particular version, I decided to go part for part on this thing, as close as I possibly could get it. Every line, every detail, every part, as close to Eddie Van Halen's actual one as possible. EVH themselves released a replica that was a very limited run. That run was about $8 grand, and I think I probably built this for less than $1,000, maybe $1,200. If you're willing to spend the time on it, you can create something even more accurate than the EVH version of it. I mean, you got to think. You got all the time in the world, so you can spend all the time in the world on this and make it perfect. It took me 5 months to do this, okay? A little bit of time, and with EVH, they're running it, even with Chip Ellis building it, it's still on their timeline. So he's having to build them fast, and even with the best techniques, you know, you're gonna miss stuff. And so you can really get extremely close. This one's made out of Northern Ash, just like the original. And I got to tell you right now, Northern Ash is super heavy. It's a super heavy wood, weighs about like a Les Paul does, or an older 70s Strat, like a 79 Strat. You know, the super heavy Strats they had, incredibly heavy. This guitar weighs about the same as one of those Strats does. Very hefty. In fact, when I talked to Brad Tolinski and Chris Gill, who actually handled the Frankenstein, they both said it was a substantial guitar in terms of weight and would be in that range of that older 70s Strat. And I have to concur. This ash body is super heavy. Now, this body is a lot bigger. I mean, generally, you know, bigger than these two bodies. This is a regular strap body I got on eBay. I made that in 2006, my first replica. And then my EVH Stripe series is more like a Charvel body, a typical Charvel body. So they're a little different sizes. They don't even, you know, they're not that accurate to this, actually. So this is a different thing. You got the big headstocks, like the old Strat headstock, 21 frets, brass nut, single tab Shaler tuners on the back. My pickup in this, my pickup choice is the Frankenstein pickup. Figured, why not? That's the pickup, right? From EVH. The pick guard was made by a friend of mine who does that. It's an exact copy of the original that Eddie cut out with scissors. And every little nuance of that's reproduced here. I don't know whether he traced it or how he went about doing that, but it's an amazing copy of it. Of course, the tone knob where the volume knob is supposed to be typical Fender tremolo, which you don't want to whammy unless you're really good at figuring out how to make that stand tune, which is not easy. Like I said, 21 frets like an original Strat. What else is different? Of course, the eye hooks, you know, that Eddie came up with for the strap. And of course, the amazing dog collar or dog collar strap that my buddy Lewis makes from Fairfield Guitar Company. He also makes the bomber strap, and which was also used on this guitar at that point in '78. Now the finish. Let's talk about the finish. This guitar body comes with nothing on it. It's raw northern ash, and it's actually really pretty. But you got to ruin it to make this guitar. So what you first do is you get the raw body and the raw neck with no tuners. In my case, Donnie Ward actually set the nut up a little bit for me and got me going. But basically you have to take that body and then you have to put some sealer on it so that the paint doesn't soak into the wood and you see all the wood grain, because there's a ton of wood grain in ash. So you've got to put some sealer on it if you want it to be somewhat non-grainy. And you know, even with sealer I did, there's still a tiny bit of grain in this, but a lot of people say that Eddie didn't use any grain filler, and I kind of disagree with that. I think maybe that it was already grain filled before he got it. They might have gone halfway there and decided to toss that body, but it doesn't look that grainy when you look at it in the pictures, and I think that's kind of important to note. Eddie also said that once he striped it and painted it, that he just used rubbing compound to buff it out, which means he didn't wet sand it, so it doesn't have a factory finish like these other two, like gloss factory finishes, right? This is sort of a kind of a flat finish with just a little bit of shine, and you'll see that in the pictures too, just a little bit of shine in those pictures. Now, I did that a different way. I mean, I put the sealer on, put primer on, of course, and then when I painted it black over that, and then you then stripe it with all of the different patterns, and I'll get into that a little bit in a second. And then when you pull that tape, well, then you paint it white, and then you pull that tape up, and that gives you the image with the black stripes. Now, you have to make all these images match the original photos, and so you have to have some reference photos. And I used this famous photo from Young Guitar Player as my reference photo, and a couple others. Here's another one. This one's Niels Lozauer from The Day on the Green. You can kind of see up the guitar body that way. It's kind of cool. And there's another one here that I used of a really close-up of the guitar, which shows you real great detail. Now, how I got some of the exact shapes of some of the things like what people commonly call the seagull here, I had to take this image, and this is how it works. This is how you can do this, and this is how I think they do it themselves at the factory. You have to take a known part on this guitar, put it against a known image from Eddie Van Halen's guitar, match the size of that image on your iPad or on your laptop to the actual pickup, so it's the exact size on the screen. Then you can take that image on the screen and move it over to where you can get to things like the seagull, and then you take painter's tape, and you put it on the screen of your iPad or your laptop over the image of the guitar at the right size. Then you trace it with a pen, and then you pull that piece of tape off and you cut it out with an X-Acto knife as closely as you can. And I used a paint stick to put that piece of tape on, and then I cut into the paint stick with my X-Acto knife around the image that I traced. So I did that here, back here I did it. Anywhere that you didn't use a standard line, like here is another one of those weirdo things that's on the original. And up on the horn, up here, there's another kind of weird spot. So that's how you recreate these exact lines, by using the real image from the real guitar, tracing that image onto painter's tape, putting that image from a computer, you put it on the laptop or iPad, you trace it off the real image, sized with a real piece of the guitar though, and then you can copy it, literally copy that. But the quality of this is going to be determined by how well you X-Acto knife that thing out. All right, so that's one of the secrets to doing it. So anyway, I did that all over the guitar. I actually put a, you see this back here, a little tribute to Eddie Van Halen here and here. A couple things that I wanted to do different. I have a 61071 back plate. Of course, the back here, that's the matching plate to the original. You have the goofy little part right here where it's not bright. You know, you see that in the photos. I didn't rough it up yet. I didn't do any kind of relicking. It probably is going to get that way just from the dog chain being on it and stuff like that. So I didn't go that far. I wanted to kind of be in new condition of what he would have done at that point in '78 when he first made it. That's how I wanted this to be. And as I said, ash body, maple neck. You got the brass nuts. You got to have that. The Gibson sticker, of course, you need to have that. Pickup of choice. There's a bunch of different Frankenstein, you know, themed pickups you can get out there. Standard Fender tremolo, jack. What else? Of course, you got to get the eye hooks. You can get these things from Lowe's, you know. I forget what the size is, but you'll have to check that online. I think it's number 4, but I'm not perfectly, I don't know, 4 or 6. They're pretty big. Look at the photos. You can tell by the photos with a couple eye hooks. You can figure out which one it is. Pretty cool. And have somebody put those in that knows what they're doing if you don't know what you're doing with a drill, okay? You don't want to mess this up and have to get it filled and all that. So anyway, Frankenstein 78. Now, this guitar came to my hometown in Birmingham, Alabama twice in 1978. In the spring they came, and then I think it was April 9th, and then they came back on November 8th with Black Sabbath. So the first time through they came with Journey. The second time through they came with Black Sabbath. I made a video when I picked this up from my luthier buddy where I went down to the actual venue where this guitar came in through the back door, and I went to that back door. So you need to check that video out, Walking in the Footsteps of the Frankenstein, I think I'm going to call it, and see that video and see that venue, and you can see exactly where this guitar would have walked through twice in 1978. So I thought that was kind of fun to do, just to do that, because I was close and I could do it. I loved building it. It was a good time, and it was like, you know, going back and being there with Eddie in 1978. So after his passing, I really wanted to do something, a tribute, and I wanted to make it a guitar. So I did that with this guitar. And I'm going to play it, and I'm also going to keep it around and just have it remind me every day of Eddie Van Halen. Also, I wanted to talk about the differences between this replica that I built, which is much more accurate to the original, and the EVH branded Stripe Series and my personal 2006 replica I made already. Now, when I made my 2006, there wasn't much internet other than some forums maybe, or some, like, you know, .coms that you could go on, like Van Halen Links or whatever, and talk about this. And not many people had shared how to do things. But after, you know, since 2006, it's all over the place. You have everything now. You got groups that have all this information on how to build these. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I bought an online book to do this. And that online book was by a guy named John Janelecki. And John went through every step of how to paint it and everything. And I did a full factory finish on this with a little help from a friend who buffed it out in the end. And I think the finish looks cool. But of course, this was flat. It was a flat finish. Eddie didn't put any clear coat on it like that. Not a heavy clear coat. He said that all he did was buff it with with rubbing compound, which is just a little bit of cut to cut some of the even the paint out. You know, it's like wet sanding but less intense. And that's kind of where I went with this. But what I actually did was I painted the original stripes on it, you know, and then I hit it with clear, light clear coat, actually after I put the pinstripes on. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want the pinstripes to come off, even though they did on Eddie's, and you know I could always just put them back. But I thought, well, I saw a picture of some of the replicas they made that were $8,000, and it looked like they had clear coated on top of the pinstripe. So I thought, well, I'll do that too. The downside of that is the clear coat, if you don't wet sand it, it's always a little bit cloudy. You can do what Eddie did though and take like Meguiar's rubbing compound, and put it in between all this and then rub it out. And that's kind of what I did. I did a light buffing on it. And it still looks a little, you know, like a little flat, which is what Eddie's look like with a little bit of shine. But these factory finishes, of course, are high gloss. The other thing about the Stripe series is things like details, man. This is one thing that bothers me about the EVH ones. The details are just off. And I'm not sure if that's intentional. I'm pretty sure it is, because you can't go to well for somebody to get an exact replica if you already gave them the one for $800 or whatever, $1,000 or whatever. So, I mean, it's just a good business decision, I would guess, not to do that. And they have another one of these coming out that's going to be more like the Frankie relic, which I have, you know, for like $1,800-$1,900. That's going to be relicked, and it's going to be the black and white. And I'm kind of like on the fence about it. Now I have 3 of these, so why do I need this thing? And if it's not really any more accurate than this, why do I need it? Well, there's one reason why you need it. Because it'll actually, you know, retain its value and probably go up in value, because they're not going to make these things forever. I mean, they just won't. So buying a guitar is always a great investment, especially from a major vendor. And, you know, EVH is my favorite brand, obviously, so I don't mind doing it. But I don't like the fact that they get so off on the details. On the Frankenstein relic in particular, I was really mad when that came out, because they showed it at NAMM with the striping being correct as far as like the top horn, where the white and black and red stripes are correct. And then they came out with it totally different. Now, I'm all good with them showing it at NAMM the way they're going to come out with it, like this. But when they show it at NAMM and then deliver something different in the end, it's just straight up bait and switch. I don't care who you are or what company you are or who was behind it. It's bait and switch, man. You should have shown it the way it was going to be, set the expectations, and delivered. But, you know, I don't understand those kind of decisions. That's just not the kind of business person I am. So I would always make sure that you got what I promised you. So that kind of made me mad. But this, you know, was pretty close. They have a lot of variation in these that you find online. And I found one online that was close enough. And I bought that one because I thought it was pretty close. But again, it's not as close as this, by far. And it's not as close as my original 2006 either. This is much closer to my replica than this. You got the standard bridge. You got a custom 5 pickup in this, which or a custom. That's a killer sounding pickup. I've got a video out there of me playing this through my Friedman small box. Check that out. It's awesome. It sounds killer. The Wolfgang pickup is a great pickup. It sounds good too. Main thing with this guitar was the Floyd Rose. You know, having a standard Strat tremolo just sucks if you're trying to do a lot of whammy and you don't really want to do that. But anyway, that's my 3 guitars. On this one I had a graphite nut, small headstock. You know, that kind of stuff was wrong. Small headstock on this one, Floyd Rose, that was wrong. You know, until later in its life. So, you know, it depends on what kind of detail you want, you know, and I think for me, it was time for me to do something that's exactly reproduced as possible. When I knew I could do it, I just had to put the time in. And it took me 5 months. 5 months of here and there for months. I had to start over from scratch one time to repaint it, which is less than the first time. But I love this guitar. It's such an iconic piece of history. People don't realize how much it did, what kind of change in music it made. I tell people all the time that you know, these guitars, or this guitar and the Frankenstein, had such an impact, and Eddie Van Halen had such an impact on the music business that anywhere you go, you know, in music stores around the world, you'll see little things that were Eddie Van Halen inspired. They may not be a guitar with stripes, but there's all kinds of things that carry on from him, as well as, you know, like even back in the 70s, or in the 80s, sorry, in the 80s, everybody wanted to have a striped, not necessarily a striped guitar, but a graphic guitar. And Eddie Van Halen was, you know, the person who inspired these people to have all these different variations on the theme and create something new that was exciting, great to look at, great on stage. People loved, you know, everything from tiger stripes to these stripes to all kinds of graphics, you know, that were on them. It's just amazing what he did with this one guitar. And not only through the innovation of building this thing, which was a combination of a Strat and a Les Paul idea, it's with what he played on it. You know, obviously, the, you know, Eruption was mind-blowing technically, but also regular people got that composition as mind-blowing. You know, sometimes you hear Holdsworth, it's mind-blowing, but regular people think it's just noise, you know. Only musicians can really appreciate that. But when Eddie played Eruption, everyone got it. And they understood the virtuosity and the fire in his playing. And that was so important. And that was this guitar right here. All history was changed in rock and roll with this guitar. So glad I could recreate it and walk in Eddie's footsteps once more. And I have two other ones, and maybe another one coming. We'll see. But I'm nuts like that. I have so many. I have guitars that I just love. Like I have a couple of PRSs over there. They're the same guitar. They're just that good. And when I find good stuff, sometimes I buy multiples. You know, if it's a good product or a good guitar or whatever, I might buy two of them. Because, hey, two's better than one. So I hope you enjoyed it. Watch that second video, walk in the footsteps of Frankenstein. And check out my next video that's coming out for Van Halen Stories, number 16 with Jim Gostad. He's a tone master of Van Halen, so you got to check that out. Y'all rock on. Have a good one. Almost can't play that on this guitar because I know it wasn't played on this guitar.